Hi, Yael. How you doing?
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm great.
Excellent, excellent. I'm really grateful that you decided to come on How to Start Up.
My pleasure.
How are you doing? How are you dealing with all this weird environment that we're currently living in?
Well, it's my partner and I at Genderscope have been quite lucky that a lot of our work is already home-based and remote. So it hasn't been such a big change as it is for probably a lot of other people. And yet, these are definitely strange times.
They are. They are. We can't. We can definitely agree on that. And before I start, obviously, you are the co-founder and co-director of Genderscope. Would you mind just giving us a quick overview as to what Genderscope is?
Of course, Genderscope is a gender business consultancy.
Okay.
So we advise companies on how to become more gender equal with regards to their corporate culture, with regards to their policies, and we also provide legal advice. So we really try to give kind of like a 360 overview and holding companies accountable to really make gender equality a success rather than just something that they say that they want to do and hardly achieve, which is unfortunately a lot of the cases.
Okay. So, what do you usually see as the main issues within organizations?
I would say, well, there's a couple of issues. One of it is that a lot of the time when it comes to gender equality, it becomes assigned to someone at HR or maybe like a little committee of women and LGBT people without actually having the leadership of the company accountable and providing example. That is definitely one issue. Another issue is money. It is about giving a budget and providing commitment and making gender equality exactly like any other business goal that you have for your business. These are the main issues. And then another issue is that basically a lot of the time there's a misunderstanding of what gender dynamic is and actually how to achieve it.
What is gender dynamic?
Well, let's start by what it's not. So I think a lot of the time when people hear gender, they think about women or they think about LGBTQ plus people, sorry, which is, yes, a part of the field of gender, but actually gender and gender dynamics is a power relation which exists in society and therefore it exists also in the workplace. So basically what I'm trying to say is that gender dynamics also includes men and masculinities. And that is a lot of the time the missing piece of what we are actually trying to address in order to achieve gender equality. So we do need to look at what does masculinity in the workplace means, and also where are men being either privileged or disadvantaged in the workplace as well.
And so you mentioned what masculinity means. How have you guys been addressing that? I suppose what is what do you mean by what is masculinity? I guess.
Well, first of all, let's say that there's no one masculinity. There's like a range of masculinity. So what we're talking about is the type of masculinity that leads the public sphere, that leads politics, that leads economics, that leads business. And masculinity is often identified by ideas and traits like competition, like rationality, what else? Gosh, I was just working on this today, but now my mind is a little blank. But the idea is that we give more higher value and especially monetary value to traits that we perceive to be masculine, regardless of who actually portrays them.
So someone like maybe like commission within sales.
Well, yeah, but I mean, the idea is that if you we value competition or rationality or the kind of aggressiveness in the workplace over traits like care or emotionality or compassion, which are equally as vulnerable in the workplace as well. There's ample research saying that, leaders who are portraying these traits are, makes a lot more profit for the company, and there's a better teamwork and better decision making, etc. And yet we do tend to value and measure people according to traits which are more, again, masculine.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that makes sense. But I suppose if you were to quell certain elements of competition, would that therefore make it more difficult for organisations to actually excel and to increase their overall revenue? If you're not empowering your sales team, for instance, we're going back to the sales team and commission again, because it's the thing that I can most easily relate to personally.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that these values are not important. I'm just saying that we need to also raise the capital of quote unquote feminine traits. So things like care and emotionality, we need to give more attention to them. And I think the best example for it is parental leave. So usually, well, first of all, women or people who identify as women, mothers, shall we say, get much longer parental leave. But when you look at the men and the statutory leave in different countries, and even more so, how many men actually take the statutory leave in countries, you see a very, very low rate. So that raises a really big question mark. And things like care for children, or the trait of care, this is like a direct example of how we don't value it as much. So I think this is the place where men are actually being discriminated against by not allowing the same parental leave as women.
Yeah, I've noticed that. I think companies have started to address that in a small sense, maybe because of your help.
Well, hopefully, I mean, it is moving forward. This is definitely where we are progressing, and that is basically why we started Genderscope. There is a shift in concept, especially when you think of millennials and Generation Z. These things, flexible work and better benefits, are really, really high up in their rank when they're looking for a workplace. So these priorities are definitely on the rise, and the companies that are going to respond to that are the ones that are going to come up on top.
I see. So let's just take this back, obviously, to when you founded Genderscope. Obviously, that was back in 2017, right?
Yes.
So obviously, I know you've got a very colourful, multifaceted history in gender studies. I think you've got 3 separate degrees, haven't you?
I do, yeah.
It's okay. It's nothing. It's nothing to be humble about. You boast it. Be proud. It's amazing. And so obviously, your whole history has been based around gender studies, and so I imagine that's probably what prompted you to start Genderscope in the first place. But I suppose what made you think that it was time to actually start Genderscope, if you see what I mean? Were there not other organizations out there doing similar things?
There are other organizations and consultancies that support businesses with gender equality. However, our approach is slightly different, and like the reason we started it is, I mean, serendipity. I guess it just felt like it was time, and my business partner Cernan, who is a human rights lawyer, and I were kind of like separately, but at the same time thinking about the same thing. And then we kind of reached out to each other, reconnected after several years of, we met at university. So part of it was just kind of, if you are in this field, so, you kind of follow the news and kind of, follow the change in policy and follow the kind of general vibe of society, and you kind of feel into it. So I think both of us kind of felt that it was time. And in terms of how we work and how is it different, then again, a lot of companies identify gender with women. And this is something that we are really trying to, we're basically trying to like expand the conversation, because if you're only focused on the disadvantaged group, you're never going to actually resolve the main issue. The main issue is like, why are we giving so much value and monetary value and attention to what we perceive to be masculine in our society and therefore in our businesses? Whereas when there is so much evidence that we can actually really benefit if we create a better balance. So that was kind of the trigger for us to start Genderscope, and we really try to bring in a wider approach to our policy consultation, to our trainings, to everything that we do.
No, it's amazing. And so in terms of obviously starting the business, let's talk first and foremost about who you decided to go after as your first clients, because I know that you were working as a consultant before. So were you able to take some of those clients over to Genderscope, or are you targeting a whole new different kettle of fish?
It was a bit tricky for us in the beginning, I would say, because really, like, anyone could use our services. Like, any company, big or small, can use services of gender consultants. Even, at some point we were really aiming to work with startups, and we had to some extent as well, because our thought was, why not create a better foundation from the get-go and make sure that you have a gender-sensitive code of conduct, which is one of our main products, for example, and know that you have your policies and your values in place, so that you don't have to deal with gender pay gap or with sexual harassment or with any other with issues of representations and leadership, 5 years, 10 years, into the future. That proved to be a bit tricky because startups don't have a lot of money. But in terms of who do we go for our clients, we try to use our network as much as possible. When we first started, we registered into a foundership competition through our university, LSE, London School of Economics. We won the competition, and then we kind of became part of the LSE Generate program. And shortly after that, they became our first client, which was a really brilliant kind of first start, because very, very well connected and very committed. We created the gender sensitive code of conduct for LSE Generate. You can actually find it online if you Google LSE Generate gender sensitive code of conduct, and you can basically see kind of one of our first work, which we are very, very proud of. And that document is a living, breathing document, meaning that we review it annually, we make changes to it, we hold them accountable as well. So it's not just something to put in a drawer and forget about it.
No, that's superb. And obviously, as you just said very rightly, well, first and foremost, kudos to LSE for giving back to their students and obviously allowing themselves to become your first client. And because they're living, breathing proof that this stuff works, then you have obviously been able to use that as a huge platform to obviously get referrals. So I presume you got a fair few referrals off the back of that.
It's been great. We've been, introduced to a lot of great people, and this has kind of been building up, and we still have a working relationship with them. We give trainings, and we are always kind of in the community, which is brilliant.
That's amazing. It's really lucky as well. So in terms of obviously the people that you've met, so obviously from your perspective, because it's not really an area that I've covered yet, but it's an area that I'm very familiar with. It's because obviously this podcast is more about the practicalities of having a business and running it. We're looking at this more from a B2B business perspective, because you're essentially approaching businesses. So obviously you've been able to be introduced to a lot of people, but say for instance, how did you guys identify who to target within the businesses, and how did you go about it? Do you have a lead generation process, or are you just solely relying upon your network from LSC to be introduced to new potential clients?
It's kind of a combination. To be honest, we're still figuring it out. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not like we started and had like a complete. We did have a business plan at some point, but it's still kind of like a trial and error experience. And our clients, a lot of the time, actually come to us, which is amazing. So one part of the business is actually trying to get media coverage. So interviews, podcasts, such as this. I've been invited to BBC World News once. All of these things are really, really wonderful. And then, like people can reach out to us afterwards, and we can also promote it on LinkedIn, etc., to just kind of, give us the credentials. So that's one kind of stream of work. The other is...
Sorry to interrupt. Let's dig into that a little bit more. So obviously you're therefore, if clients are coming to you, then the process by which you're doing it is obviously relying upon PR to build your brand and to have a bit more of a pull technique. So how were you able to, I know you got invited onto BBC World News to discuss the amount of unpaid hours that social care workers, particularly women, were doing. Yeah, I mean, the care industry is horrendous for workers. I've had friends that have worked in social care, and they work such horrendous hours and so much overtime. It's ridiculous. So how have you been able to get onto these onto these shows and be able to reach out to all these, I suppose, thought leaders and I suppose brands with massive coverage?
So I think it's kind of like one thing building onto the other.
Okay.
So it's literally, I think the more interviews and media appearances I have out there, the more they kind of come our way. But there is also some platforms that you can register on as kind of like, help a reporter out, or kind of like be the expert for this. So I'm also there, and I believe that some of them kind of reach out to us through that as well.
Which platforms are those, just for the one or two viewers that are looking at this?
Well, the main one right now is called Help a Reporter Out. So it's HARO, Harrow. And it's really cool. You can register for free, and they can reach out. Some of it is not really relevant, but some of it is. And again, I mean, some of it, they just kind of, probably find us online and reach out, which is brilliant.
No, that's fantastic. But I imagine that must have been how you started out. So you jumped onto these platforms, get your brand out there. That's fantastic. So have you had, I suppose, because an area that I like to cover as well often is like brand values and how you build up your brand. But I suppose you're essentially the extension of the brand. Obviously, yourself and it's Cernan, your co-founder, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Obviously, it's an interesting one because you are the embodiment of Genderscope almost. So your personal brand reflects very, very closely to Genderscope itself, which is interesting. How did you establish in the first place that was the way in which you wanted to build your brand in the first place, to be able to get it out there? Or more importantly, why did you decide in the first place that was the route you wanted to go? If that makes sense.
I think the first thing that we knew that we wanted to do was training.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are, well, I mean, actually, it's not just for training. Also, if you're consulting people on policy, I mean, you have to be the expert, right? I mean, you are the product. It was kind of built into to the business itself. If you're a consultant, then you need to show that you know your thing. And the only way to show that is to be interviewed, is to make sure that you appear as a reliable, knowledgeable person, which is, it's a bit of a head trip, but that is the way to go, I think. Plus, I have to say that I do enjoy talking about my work because I love it. So it's also one of the fun parts of the business.
Well, that's it. I mean, I don't think you would have been doing it for 17 years had you not enjoyed it. Tiny little bit.
Yeah, there's a big pull for me, for sure.
So what was let's just go back into you a little bit. So what was the main draw for you in terms of gender studies, and why you ended up starting this amazing company?
I kind of almost fell upon gender studies by mistake. During my first degree, I was at the time studying art history and philosophy. And some of the courses had some gender studies in them, both in art history and philosophy. And I just found it fascinating. I thought that it explained a lot about the world. It felt kind of like the missing link in a lot of the problems that I was seeing in society. I'm originally from Israel. It's a very complicated place to grow up in. And when I started studying this, things started to make sense. So I kept on investigating. I became very socially active at some point. So everything that I was doing always had kind of a gender component to it. And, I moved to the UK. I studied human rights and gender. I interned in some places, always, and then I started working in the field, and it was always had some gender component to my work. So that it was always something that I felt was people need to know more about it, and it feels like if we were, the solutions to a lot of the issues come from that perspective. This is how I see it. And in terms of why we started Genderscope, another thing that I was feeling and noticing as I was kind of making my career progression in a lot of like human rights organizations, international organization, research centers, a lot of them were very kind of clearly feminist organizations and dealt with issues of gender. And yet the corporate culture or the organizational culture felt unbalanced to me in many ways. There were, again, issues of competition and issues of holding on to power and issues of kind of like having to be very rational and not show emotions and things like that didn't feel right to me, especially as a feminist organization. And I'm saying this not to kind of badmouth my previous working places. I've learned a lot from them, and they've been brilliant experiences. But I kept on seeing that there is something missing, and I started thinking that what people really need to have, or everyone needs to have, kind of like a gender 101, kind of like, basic gender issues, so that we don't just pay lip service to saying that we want to have gender equality, but actually make it so. And I was saying that for about 2 years, until I realized that no one else is going to do it, and therefore I should do it. It kind of, it was brewing in my mind for a while, and then I just went for it.
No, that's amazing. I mean, because obviously when you feel that passionate about any particular thing, you're able to form a business out of it, and no one else is doing it right, then there's so much more investment on an emotional point of view, as well as obviously a monetary one as well. So it's fantastic you've gone ahead and done this. Obviously, one of the areas that I think organizations, or I imagine you've addressed as well with organizations, has been the gender pay gap. I think you already mentioned that earlier. What kind of issues have you encountered within organizations that have been struggling with that?
The issue of gender pay gap is kind of similar to sexual harassment, which are kind of like the two big gender-related issues that people are talking about these days, are a result of a bigger structure, of a bigger gender dynamic issue that is happening in the workplace and in society at large. So I think a lot of organizations kind of think that they're going to get a quick fix, and that is not the case. The way to go about resolving gender pay gap is by creating bigger and wider policies that promote, for example, more equal parental leave. Therefore, women can go back to work earlier, and they don't have to carry the toll of paying with their career and not progress to a higher level. Therefore, creating a gender pay gap. That's one of the issues. The gender pay gap exists. But that is an example to say that a lot of the time you cannot address gender issues separately. You have to look at it from a bigger kind of meta point of view, understand the dynamic in your organization, and then decide on particular actions that together will create a shift.
Okay.
So that is why we work with our clients long term. We don't just come in, come out. We actually monitor their commitments.
Okay, cool. So you haven't actually seen within organizations like men and women generally actually getting paid differently for doing the same job?
That is rarely the case. Mostly gender pay gap comes from A, having more men in leadership than women, and B, women having women, because a lot of women are are the main carers for their children, and sometimes the elderly or the sick as well. Sometimes they don't, again, choose not to progress their career, or are unable to progress with their career because of biases, and or also work part-time. And also another issue for gender pay gap is bonuses. This is where blatant discrimination actually does occur. I mean, in some companies, we're talking about 80% gap between men and women in their bonuses. So there are a lot of issues, yeah.
Wow. What is that? So what do you mean by bonuses? Is this like the overall commission, or is this just company bonuses that are just gifted to, I suppose, people in senior management positions or leadership positions?
Yeah, more the latter. Yeah.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So one of the other things I wanted to cover off with you, Yael, as well, is that one of the stats, and I think this is quite interesting because obviously you work with startups. I'm hopefully going to work with startups, or at least I'm trying to appeal to startups. Is that 93% of startup funds in Europe go to all men founding teams, which is mad. Now, why do you think that is?
Um, it's a bit of a complicated question, so let me try and kind of break it down. I mean, one thing is that a lot of the startups that are currently, coming up are IT related in one way or another, and it is still a masculine field. And yes, there are more and more women in the STEM professions, like, studying STEM. However, the environment, the corporate environment, the organizational environment is quite, can be quite nasty for women. There's quite a lot of research and evidence of women being harassed, of women not getting the promotions they deserve, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, in this particular industry, which is massive. So I think one issue is that it's not very appealing to women. The kind of IT and the startup world in that respect. Another thing is that the issue of venture capital and the type of, like, the biases that exist within the venture capital world. So, for example, there is quite a lot of research being done on the type of questions women founders get, as opposed to the type of questions that men founders get. So it's very, very evident across the board that often women are asked about how they're gonna risk manage the capital and the development of the business, and men are getting questions on actually how you're gonna grow and multiply and escalate. No, what's the word I'm looking for when you kind of jump scale?
Maximize your growth.
Scale up.
Scale up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Scale up.
Friday. So men often get the kind of, like, basically the question of, like, if I'm a venture capitalist, what I would ask a man is, like, how are you going to get me my money back and more? And for women, how are you going to not spend my money and make me lose, basically? So there's a very, very internal bias that, women are somehow incapable of, managing investments and actually developing business, although evidence show that businesses with women founders actually do significantly better than all men, ventures.
Interesting. And is that where did you find the research that venture capitalists or VC firms have that kind of internal bias?
I found it through several sources, but I think the one that comes to mind is a TED Talk. I can't remember her name. She's a researcher in quite a significant university, and she basically went researched a lot of kind of dragon dance type competitions, and across the board it was very, very clear. And also, the money that went to, like, the biggest chunk of money that was given was significantly more to men founders.
That's really interesting, because I do find that now, especially in this day and age, and with VC firms that are primarily investing in potential for high growth IT companies and tech startups, they're a hell of a lot more tolerant. And I think there's a huge they're very, very liberal in their approach and mindsets, a lot of these tech startups as well. But of course there is the STEM aspect, the lack of women studying STEM subjects, and the willingness to want to learn to code potentially is probably making a huge impact on that. So it's surprising to hear that 93% is a staggering number, but I suppose that does definitely come down to the amount of tech startups that actually take place. How else? So say for instance, you've got, I suppose you haven't had any VC firms as clients yet, have you? Because that'd be awesome.
We're trying. We are trying, but not yet.
Well, this is your perfect opportunity.
Exactly. Come to us. We will work together. It will be great.
I hope you're listening, guys, and give me some investment. And I don't know what in. And okay, so let's just head back to the actual business itself again. Obviously, in terms of your brand building activities, a lot of PR has been going into it. But what about the name Genderscope itself? Where did you come up with the name from? Because it's easy to remember, and it's something that it will spring to mind when people think of a gender consultancy.
Thank you. I'm glad that. Thank you for the feedback. We were just playing around with ideas, and I think we initially had the tagline, which is bring in a new dimension to your business, because the way that I see it, understanding gender dynamics is basically like putting on glasses. We call it the pink glasses a lot of the time. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. So as someone who studied a lot of gender, I see the dynamics everywhere. But, people who never kind of came from this field, who never took a course, who never really kind of understood the basics, then clearly they don't see it. So when we come into a company, what we want to do is to make people gender literate, to make people kind of see the dynamics and see where the pitfalls and have the know-how of what is kind of how to really address it from a very deep technique or place. So I think we started with bringing a new dimension, and then kind of scope makes sense because it's kind of like telescope and kaleidoscope.
Focus and vision. I like it. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically and also kind of the idea that we don't just come and empower women in your company, we actually bring a whole new process to the organization.
I think that's the issue of 21st century feminism. I think there's this immediate, almost adverse reaction from a lot of society, thinking that again it's all about women without actually addressing it. Although a lot of, I suppose, self-proclaimed feminists, celebrity feminists in particular, do say that it's about equality amongst men and women. The problem is the word feminism will actually put a lot of people off simply because they don't understand it. Simply, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's kind of like an ongoing debate how much we should actually use this term. I wear the badge proudly because I'm only here on the shoulders of so many other women that fought for us. So I think it's still a very valid movement, and the gender inequality in our world is still very staggering, unfortunately. So there's much more work to do, and at the same time, we use the word gender and not women,
no, which is good.
Or not for that purpose.
I think that's very important. I think you probably end up. I think it would be a lot more difficult to approach businesses if it wasn't neutral. From that perspective. I can't remember who I was speaking at. Yes, I was speaking to, the founder of Happiness Factory, really, really nice Belgian chap, Felix Dennis, I think. Anyway, long story short, he was working as an engineer for a long time, and then he realized that there was just a lack of empowerment within businesses. You guys would have a great chat, actually. There was a lack of empowerment, and he wanted to approach things purely from helping people develop mentally and emotionally rather than focusing, and especially you'll find this in the engineering world, which I'm sure you know is very male focused and obviously very competitive, very logical and very raw and very functional, if that makes sense. And suppose he was approaching it from a different perspective altogether, and he found for the first 6 years of his business, and I can't remember what he'd called it before, but he'd called it, I can't remember what he'd called it for the life of me. God, and this was probably the main point of my story, but he changed it. After 6 years, he changed it to the Happiness Factory, and he went back to businesses and really asked for some proper feedback. And boom, he suddenly saw a massive rise in terms of sales and traction. Fantastic. But yeah, just making sure the name's right from the beginning, especially when you're a consultancy and you're approaching businesses, is so important. So yeah, well done to you on that. And so in terms of obviously the digital marketing that you've been doing around building up your brand, obviously you said that it has been a combination of PR, but also lead generation. Tell me about the kind of practices and the tools that you currently use to help any other consultancies out there that are trying to build their brand, I guess.
Well, I think we kind of have like a two-way stream. So one of them is through LinkedIn, which, I mean, this is where our clients are, right? So we do kind of advertise various kind of thought pieces and articles and kind of research results and things that are relevant to our work. We try to be quite active there. So that's kind of one piece. The other one, well, actually, I would say we have three now almost. I'll get to that. The second one is that we work a lot with international organizations, international development organizations. So, for example, we had quite a long project with UNDP, United Nations Development Program, supporting companies to become more gender equal. It was kind of a year-long project. Now we are working with a German development organization called GIZ, and they are funding the mainstreaming of the ASEAN Secretariat in Jakarta, Indonesia. So this is also kind of a big project for us. So the tenders for gender consultants in the world of international development and specifically for us related to business and related to organizational development is quite big. So these are kind of like the two main kind of leads that we are working on, and we are currently also developing an online course, so that will be something that will be available to anyone really who really wants to kind of sink their teeth into it and become gender literate and get the tools to develop their own gender strategy.
And this is your new online course, right?
Yeah, we are soon going to launch our beta version of it, which will be a live training. It's a trial and error, and actually doing a beta version is, I think, hopefully a very good idea, so that we can get a small, very quality group of people that will kind of go with us for 8 weeks, 1 hour per week, different topics, and really kind of providing them with the tool, and it's going to be in a very reduced price, and in return they get to work with me live, and they get to also kind of develop as a group and then give us feedback and give us testimonials. So that's kind of the first stage, and once we finish that round, we're going to actually launch kind of a standalone online course.
Ooh, exciting stuff. So talk to me about that, actually. How are you launching it? Because I think that's an area of, because obviously this is just what anyone else would term, I suppose, particularly in like the FMCG industry, as a product extension almost. So you've got a new product. What is your strategy for launching a new product when you've already got an existing brand? What do you do? How do you get it out there? Obviously this is one way you could do it.
Yeah, I mean, here I am. Maybe that will bring something over. And we're also obviously going to, advertise this on LinkedIn very soon, probably on Monday. And, just kind of give people kind of something short, not too long, would you like to be a founding member in our online course? We have a pretty cool title. It's called From Gender Novice to Gender Literate, Develop Your Gender Strategy in 8 weeks. And, just kind of like explaining the kind of basic process. And for more details, reach out to us. And then we're also preparing a kind of like a PDF with a bit more details on what exactly does it include, and the time and the place and the money and all of the details for people, kind of more serious about it. And we're also going to reach out to all of our contacts, all of our leads, via email. And again, over the past 3 years, we've had a lot of meetings and conversation with with potential clients that kind of almost made it. And for various reasons, we kind of didn't progress so far. So this is a really great opportunity to hopefully bring them in, bring them on board for, not a lot of cost to them. And I think they can get quite a lot from it. I mean, we're going to give everything we know, so that's quite a valuable deal, I would say.
No, for sure. So I just wanted to ask, obviously, as a founder of a business, which has obviously been going for 2.5 years now, so what has been the main struggle that you've encountered so far?
Just one. I think actually kind of developing the sales strategy and the PR strategies is kind of an ongoing, as I was saying, kind of trial and error, because our clients come to us from different strange. I mean, I currently don't have a strategy which has been consistent long enough that I can say this one, and kind of know that it works. It's still very much a work in progress. So it's constantly kind of figuring it out as we go along, which it can be like a very interesting and fun game, but it can also be exhausting sometimes when you kind of, look at next month's revenue and you kind of say, okay, what should I do now in order to, make sure that we are good and growing? And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So I think over time we are developing kind of a clear idea of how to do it, but neither me or my partners in them have any kind of business background. So we literally learning it as we go along. In terms of the business development background, of course, I mean, we are fairly capable of advising businesses on how to be more gender equal. But the business development part is definitely kind of an ongoing growing edge, shall we say?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it's a difficult one, isn't it? I think from my perspective, it'd be completely different. But I suppose with that in mind, what kind of tools do you reckon would have helped you to speed up the business development process, I guess, or to more simplistically refine and define it for you?
I think, I'm trying to kind of like go back to like really, really early days. I basically kind of jumped in like full on. So I quit my job. I started working temp work just to kind of support myself, which was not a lot of money, and it was quite a challenging thing, but I was really passionate and trying to grow my business. So the reason I'm saying this is that I had a lot of passion and kind of a lot of potential to develop a business, but I didn't have a lot of resources. So yes, there are a lot of things out there which are relatively free or very low budget, but I couldn't find like a proper program in a price that I could afford at the time that would teach me like, ABC of business development. That was, I mean, maybe it's out there and I haven't found it, but at the time it wasn't, it didn't come my way, and I was looking for it. Therefore, it has been kind of like a trial and error. And yes, we did this workshop and that kind of mini training, and, we tried to get everything that we can, but I think a structured program at a really affordable price would have been really
That's
good.
interesting. And you said you quit your job and just you went in, grabbed the bull by both, but grabbed the bull by the horns. That would have had a bit more impact if I had said it right the first time. And yeah, just went for it. How much money did you need to just keep going? Because were you spending on like social media ads, or you just had enough to keep you afloat?
In the beginning, we won some money at the LSE startup
How much did you win
competitions.
there,
And
if you
that,
don't mind me asking?
it's funny, it was £1,000, which, went a long way at the
I
time.
suppose if you're a consultancy, then you haven't really got a huge amount of overheads, which is really useful.
We managed to use every penny of that money. It was amazing. So yeah, I mean, it really helped us with like kind of like really basic things, like, for example, getting a website going. Like absolute kind of basics of business. And then we took it from there. I mean, in the beginning, we really didn't have a lot of money. Moving forward, a couple of months later, we applied and got a startup loan from Virgin Startup.
Oh, you're a Virgin startup. No way. Awesome. Okay.
Yeah,
Mm.
we're also working with them, so it's kind of, again, kind of someone who's kind of has been our beneficiary and then became our
I
client.
knew
It's
that. Hang on. That's how I found you in the first place.
You've been busy, huh?
Yeah, yeah, that's just an excuse though. But yes, no, obviously because Virgin Startup such a superb community. Because obviously you get an assigned business mentor, Rachel Moan from Train Like an Athlete, who I had in my third episode. Lovely, lovely girl. Honestly, so cool. She's telling me all about it and the amount of support that they were providing on an ongoing basis. I think when she applied for loan as well, there were just huge networking events that she was being invited to and things like that. And I imagine they're still providing you with the ongoing support. I imagine you've paid back your loan now, haven't you? Or ruining my
No, we are
business,
about
sorry.
to. We are making money, but not that much money yet. But yeah, I mean, we get quite a lot of support. There's kind of like ongoing webinars. There are networking events, and when there's no pandemic. And I also got an amazing mentor. Her name is Irene Moore. She is a PR expert, and she has her own company supporting women entrepreneurs. I just had a meeting with her earlier, and she is absolutely fantastic. And every time we have a session, it's so valuable. So yeah, it's been really, really great. And also now we're working with them. So it kind of became like a really valuable relationship.
No, that's superb. And I think people often underestimate the importance of mentorship as well. I think I took on a business coach about a month ago or so, and I've just seen my own personal mindset and the way in which I approach things. It's so much. I do it with so much more clarity now, and there's so much less self-doubt than there was before. I mean, what would you say to someone who is umming and erring about finding a mentor?
I would say go for it. Absolutely go for it. It's funny, I was talking to a friend of mine a couple of days ago, and she is also kind of starting a business consultancy. And she was, I hope she'll forgive me that I'm sharing this, but anonymously. She was, the first thing that she was doing, of course, is kind of like looking for the competition, right? Like who is doing the same thing and what are they doing and blah, blah. And she found this amazing consultant who has like 20 years experience and all the right connections and all of that. And she was like, oh my God, like, how can I even compare to her? And she was sharing that with me. And I was saying, ask her to be your mentor. And, like actually, you don't have to compete with someone who's like 20 years, in the field. Of course, you're not in the same level, but you are the next generation and you are clearly passionate and, knowledgeable. So why not have that relationship? And I think mentors, I mean, people are looking to mentor. It's quite surprising, but there is, well, first of all, I think for them, there's kind of like being a mentor means that you're at a certain level, you've kind of reached a certain level of success and knowledge that you can share it with someone. And also, I think it can be really gratifying to kind of raise the next generation and know that your knowledge doesn't, stay with you, but actually kind of moves on. So I would say absolutely don't be afraid to reach out to people who are like huge, worst case scenario, they're going to say, no, thank you. There's nothing wrong with
Exactly,
that.
and then you just move on to the next person and ask them. It's not a problem. I mean, and that's the same thing. It was the same conversation that I was having with Jordan Cernan from 77 Threads. He was just reaching out to multiple people at the. I think he was working full time at Capgemini whilst going to university, whilst making his streetwear brand on the side. It was madness. That's a lot. Capgemini have this amazing system with Aston University where they can they can get students can basically get a degree whilst working full time, so they have an income, and so they have no debt or anything. So it's very fortuitous. But he was telling me how he was just reaching out to multiple people on LinkedIn, and he ended up getting a VP from Selfridges on board as a mentor, and so he has been able to soundboard and write it. And it's amazing. All you have to do is ask people. It is very gratifying, and there's a huge element of self-fulfillment you get out of mentoring someone else. Yes, you could always look at it skeptically or scathingly and be like, yes, they just want to feel self-important. But yes, don't we all? We all want to feel self-important.
Fair enough. Exactly. I think there's quite a good kind of back and forth happening in the relationship of mentorship, and it's been really, really valuable for me.
No, I'm glad. So I think we've roughly come to the end. So at this moment, what I will ask you to do, as I often ask my guests to do two things for me at this point. Number one is I need you to pitch me Genderscope. You have 10 to 15 seconds to give me your best elevator pitch. You can pause, you can take a breath. Some people are really good at this. Some people are just clearly not prepared, but I imagine you might be okay at this. So on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3.
Genderscopes help companies achieve gender equality. We bring a comprehensive approach to our business, looking at policy, organizational culture, and legal issues.
Cool. That was excellent. Yeah. I'd invest. And number 2, Yael, if you wouldn't mind, it's rather awkward, getting your mobile. Are you on mobile right now?
No, this is my laptop.
Okay, so can you take your phone and take a selfie with me in the background? So someone like this.
Oh. Okay. Gosh, I'm so bad at selfies, though.
Don't worry. We're all terrible at them.
Super self-aware, like this.
Perfect. And if you can see me, yeah, perfect.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Excellent. See, look at that. Look how easy that is. You make it look easy. The confusion that is often met by you wouldn't believe it. So, last but not least, Yael, is there anything else you'd like to say to my 1 or 2 viewers out there before you end the show?
Well, I mean, what would I want to say? If you are experiencing issues of gender inequality in your workplace, speak up. Make sure that your management actually does something about it. This is something that's going to benefit the organization. In the long run, it's going to make your business more sustainable and also just a better place to work. You're going to attract better talent and become bigger and better. So do reach out to Genderscope. Our email is contact@gender-scope.com. You can also reach out to us about the online course and the beta project, which is going to be very, very exclusive. So if you're interested, reach out to us to get more details.
Excellent. And what's the website again?
www.gender-scope.com.
Perfect. Yael, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was a real pleasure to meet you. You're absolutely lovely. Your business is amazing. You've made me look at gender inequality within the workplace at such a more granular meta level, which I didn't really understand it from before. Because there is a pervasive issue there, which I suppose it all comes with, changing mindset and a change in approach, which it's very interesting. So thank you again for coming on. It was a real pleasure. And thank you, Mr. or Mrs. Listener, or Miss or yeah, Mr. or Mrs. Listener out there, or watcher. Either way, it doesn't matter. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Do me a favor and subscribe. That would be amazing. Like the video, share the video. You can even proclaim it from the mountaintop about the video. I'd love you to. It'd be amazing. But thank you very much. Next time, I have no idea who I've got on my next show, so I'm just going to have to include that later. I'm going to have to edit this in. I've forgotten who I've got on my next show. It doesn't even matter. Anyway, thank you so much, and join me next time for some real time advice.